Welcome back, guys. In a not so good day, some pretty tragic thing happened yesterday. If you guys don't know, or you may know probably by now, that this guy that you can see on the screen killed a few people, two children to be exact. And we're gonna be looking at the details later. But first of all, I would like to tell you guys it would be amazing if you guys took some time out of your life to pray for these children's families. And there have been, I guess, 17 other people who've been injured. So pray for these families because we don't know what they're going through, and it's really hard when someone dies in your family and that young. It's heartbreaking. It's really hard to live with that all your life. And it's not like a one day thing. So I would like you guys to take some time out of your life to pray for these families, pray for whatever they're going through, may pass. With that, let's start today's video. I've prepared some things for you guys. First of all, let's see a video of Charlie Kirk explaining what really
Email
happened.
us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to our podcast. That is the
Let's just
Charlie
skip
Kirk
this.
Show podcast page. We have a great guest right roster here. What is your reaction? This is a terrible day, and obviously a demonic and spiritual attack against these now young martyrs of the church.
Well, obviously, the first thing we all do is pray, of course. The strange coincidence here, I was on a conference call with a Catholic organization when this news broke. I wasn't following the news. I checked my email, and I got an email through my personal website from a guy, and he said, hey, I'm in Minneapolis. I'm law enforcement, military. There's been a shooting at this Catholic school during Mass, and the shooter was trans and killed himself. He said, can you please talk about this? I did not run with that, and I don't even mean to say that as though it's a confirmed fact now on your show, because I just said I don't know, and this is before any of this was really being reported. Now you're seeing this start to come out, possible identity of the shooter, possible video of the shooter, possible manifesto of the shooter. I watched what is purportedly the video released by the shooter, and the first reaction is it seems so clearly demonic. The kind of language that's being used, the way that it's being spoken. I'm not one of these people who sees demons hiding under every rocks. But if you acknowledge that there's evil in the world, then you have to acknowledge there is a personality to evil, and there's more in heaven and earth than is dreamt up in our philosophies. So, some of what has come out of this purported video is a little firing line, like a target with Christ's head on the top of it. Some of it is blasphemous, terrible language. And then, of course, the targeting of a church or a school, not only a school, but a school with Mass, not only Mass, but a Mass full of little kids. If this is not demonic, I don't know what is.
So what you're seeing up on screen is a picture of the mass shooter in his video with a very detailed image of the church and a knife over it. He intentionally targeted a Catholic church. He intentionally targeted kids at Mass. He intentionally targeted young kids that were Catholic and Christian. Michael, I mean, this is an attack on Christianity. The media likely will just kind of glaze over that and make it all about guns.
Just so you guys know, I'll show you what media is doing in a couple of minutes. I'll show you what their reaction was and how they reacted. And you're not going to be happy with them. As usual, they were trying to twist the narrative into something else. But we'll see that. Let's watch this for a minute.
What is your take on this deliberate, yet another Christian hate crime? And I don't like using that word. We are in the midst of a spiritual war.
Yes. A line that I don't really like using, but is apt, is that it's always the ones you most expect. It's always the ones you most expect. So in this case, Christians are being targeted while they're at prayer, while they're the most innocent people, while they're little kids who don't have personal sin. That in itself is horrifying. But you expect it in the sense that all sin is a turning away from God. All crime, all violations of the moral order are expressing a contempt for God and a self-deification.
President Trump makes healthcare a 423. Pray, they say, and
school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
That was the mayor.
Just pray, they say, and I get that he's upset. But Brian Krasenstein, a leading...
I'm sorry, I guess he was the governor, Jacob Frey.
Democrat influencer, says, quote, "Praying is the problem here, not the solution. People use prayer instead of action. If prayer worked, a house of prayer wouldn't have just experienced this tragedy." That is the modern left. I want you guys to read that, saying that prayer is the problem. By the way, prayer leads you to action, but prayer is not a guarantee of a covering. Prayer is first and foremost an act of worship and an act of contrition to an almighty God that is the author of life.
I'm sorry I gotta stop him, but I gotta say this. This is absurd. Why would you even write something like this? Saying prayer is the problem. Dude, stop defending someone who've killed other people. Stop defending a domestic terrorist. This is absurd. You know what? Christians, especially Christians, they've been so tolerant that saying things against them, saying that their praying is wrong, it has become common, and people don't talk about it because it's like, well, people are tolerant, they're like okay with stuff. No, they shouldn't be like this. You know what? You should start calling out these people. You can't just say prayer is the problem here. Shut the fuck up, man.
Michael Knowles.
Both statements are absolutely vomit-inducing. These people, if they weren't so profoundly ignorant, would merit even more of our anger. But let's just follow their ideas to their conclusion. What they're saying is, don't pray. Prayer is stupid. Let's make fun of these dead Christian kids and their families for praying. What idiots they are. They shouldn't pray. What's the alternative? Well, the alternative, I think, quite clearly, is that we just need to elect progressive politicians and enact progressive policies, because that's going to lead to progressive action to solve all of these problems and to prevent mass shootings.
No.
He's a Democrat mayor. They're in a Democrat state. There's a Democrat governor. They're full of Democrat legislators. They have all of that. How come they didn't fix it? Huh?
Right.
If the point is that you're wasting all your time praying when instead you should be electing Democrats so that we can implement our wise policies, well, you know what? You all were elected, and you didn't figure it out either.
I'm sorry, I gotta say this. This is just like Kamala Harris saying, if I get elected, I'm gonna close the border, I'm gonna do this and that. But the thing is that the moment she was saying those things, they were in power. Like Biden was in power and she was the vice president. And they were like, no, once we get into power again, then I'll do it. This doesn't make any sense. The people see through it. You can't just fool the people by saying these things.
And this is one of the errors of liberalism. Liberalism says no gods, no kings, only men. We are going to, through our rationality, create a perfect society. We're going to ignore original sin. Original sin is not real. We're going to live in this perfected utopia. That hasn't worked out very well. And the evidence is we live in a largely secular society, an extremely liberal society, a society where we're highly technocratic and we implement all sorts of wonky policies. And guess what? They still haven't extirpated original sin. So what the Christians say is, they recognize rightly, we can't save ourselves. That's an ancient heresy. It's called Pelagianism, and it's reified in modernity in liberalism. But it's not going to work. You're not going to create a utopia here on earth because we're fallen and we have concupiscence and evil just exists, okay? So in addition to doing what we can, taking appropriate and prudent political actions, we're going to pray to God, because God made us, God sustains us, God is being himself, God saves us if we are to be saved, and so we're going to rely on him. The liberals and the moderns and the secularists have no such humility, so they become even angrier, but it's an impotent kind of anger because none of their policies work either.
Yes, and you can see the example of that. By the way, let's see what the liberals actually had to say. On their media channels, I was watching and I was like totally shocked.
Going through the writings, particularly going through the videos as the shooter laid out his weapons and held up each individual parts, what you saw there was a pervasive message of hate. Hate against blacks, hate against Jews, hate against God, and the target, of course, being a Catholic church. But there's also a degree of posturing there about what we're going to investigate it as. They're investigating it in support of the Minneapolis police who have a homicide case. The offender is dead. It is doubtful that anyone other than the offender, unless we learn something very new in the next couple of days, is going to be charged. I almost find the conclusion that it's a hate crime against Catholics premature, in that we are trying to attach rational motives to a completely irrational act.
Absolutely. Where is the political ideology here, right?
Dude, stop defending the domestic terrorist killers. Stop defending them. Why is everyone, like, on the media, at least for now, stop, like, defending people? The mayor himself is like, don't pray. What? These idiots, man.
This is someone who actually attended that school at some point, so we may assume, I'm not sure, that this person is Catholic also. But what we're looking at here is...
That is clearly not Catholic. He wouldn't shoot shooting children. Like, children don't know anything. You're shooting children, like... Sorry. But you know that if you ask a child what God is, they don't really know anything. Like, they're gonna be like, well, I don't know, the guy who made us, yeah, or whatever the parents told them. They don't know the meaning of it. They don't have a political party affiliation and be like, oh, I support Trump. They don't know what Trump, whatever these people are. Children are innocent, and you have to be really, really evil person to even look at them and shoot them, kill them. I don't know. It's just like, I just couldn't even think about it. Like, why would someone do that? As you can see, they are trying to make it look like it's not an attack on Christians, which it is, in my opinion.
When kids are getting shot at in their pews at a Catholic school mass, and your crime plan is to have National Guard put mulch down around D.C., maybe you should rethink your strategy. Setting aside the fact that that's a run-on sentence and a non sequitur, what's your point about that?
Jen Psaki is a hack trying to make a political point. The reality is the tragedy that occurred today in Minneapolis is once again where the Democrats are ignoring some of the serious mental health challenges affecting young people in the United States, especially around gender identity, this transgender movement that they have fully gotten behind. On a broader level as a country, we have to take mental health much more seriously. I mean, look at the magazines, what was written on these magazines, talking about going after Christians. Where is your God? Going after Israel, actually writing there to kill Donald Trump. This is the insanity from the hatred that has come from the left. And so if they want to now come out and be mad at people who are trying to sympathize and empathize with the families, and especially the families of these two young kids that were lost, they need to re-examine everything about their party. It's not the time for politics. It's about comforting the families who have lost two young kids and then examining all the public policy so that this doesn't happen again. And I will tell you, once again, this is not about guns. This is about mental health issues that the radical left refuses to acknowledge comes from their crazy ideology, which is damaging so many children in the United States who are now becoming young adults.
He's right, you know. So there's got to stop. Like the doctors who were giving them these drugs, like the people who are supporting them and telling them the lies. You know, this individual changed their gender. And I guess changed their name at age 17. I may be wrong. I guess it was name. They changed their name. The person changed their name. Now, I think it doesn't happen like just like that. There gotta be people supporting the person. There gotta be people saying, oh, that's okay. Well, you're doing good. And I think you need to arrest the doctors who did that. And I think you need to arrest more people who makes a person this mentally ill, you know? It doesn't happen in one day, that's for sure. Let's see someone else talking about it. This is the mayor, Jacob Frey.
I don't want to tiptoe around the edge of this, but, you know, the shooter's name was in question, the gender of the shooter. No one's really sure what's going on there. 5 years ago it was Robert, then a name change to Robin. Okay. This is being seized in all corners, as you can imagine, in all sorts of ways. And you know that, Mayor, and perhaps that's why when you spoke about this, so profoundly and powerfully as you are even here now, but when you spoke about this today publicly, you voiced concern for the transgender community, for the community.
What is it with these people defending us? Everything. Oh, the child died? I don't care. Trans community must be protected. What is it with it? Go and help those people's families who are suffering, who are in this trauma right now. The people. It's not just the families, it's not just the people who got injured, it's also the people who witnessed it. It's also the people who saw that and the trauma that they carry with them, and the children that saw it. It's really hard to get trauma out of children.
Overall. And obviously, you chose to do that in that moment because you thought it was important. And I wanted to give you a chance to say why you felt it was important to do that in that moment.
Obviously, I've heard about the rhetoric and the narrative that is being pushed out, but here's the thing. Anybody that is going to use this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any community has lost touch with a common humanity. We got to be operating not out of hate for any group, but out of a love for our children.
If you really love the children, you wouldn't let that happen under your control.
That's where the focus needs to be right now. A love for our kids. Seeing these kids, not just as somebody else's kids, this horrific thing happened, but what if it was our own? How would we feel then? So, look, we need to be standing up for every community out there. A Catholic community.
But when it happens to Christian, it's just a singular event. Let's not take it as a broader point. Let's not see it as what it is, and let's not see the fact that this guy was mentally ill and the guy had the craziest views, and let's not see it as a growing, mental illness in our country. But let's just see it as a singular event. That's it. That's nothing more than that. Just 2 children died. That's it.
Community too, by
God
the way.
Dang.
I mean, any community that suffers this kind of blow, or Minneapolis community, you got to stand up for them. But
what kind of blow? The guy was mentally ill and he killed people and then killed himself. Herself, whatever that fucking person was. What kind? Is he really talking about the fact that trans community took a hit?
But, I feel oftentimes in these instances, there's this desire to villainize a group.
Oh my God. What is this?
You want to call this an act of cowardice? Do it, because it is. But regardless of what group or background, gender, the bottom line is that kids got killed. Let's love each other more. Let's love each other more, because the antidote to hate is not more hate. Hurt people, and the antidote to hate is a whole lot more love.
But there's nothing wrong with calling people out that constantly try to target a specific group of people, But the ones who are being targeted is clearly Christians, because, I guess, I don't know if it's under 6 months or over 6 months, but like, there's this guy who drove his car into people who were celebrating Christmas, I guess. He drove his car into them, and then we saw school shooting again, yep. And then this is again a shooting again. It's all against Christians. So there's something to be talking. There's something to be talked about.
It's where we all need to be going right now.
Typical leftist. Nope. Everything about trans community. Nothing about the people who died. Let me show you a clip of Scott Jennings that actually makes sense, and the guy who seems sensible here. Oh, take a look at this one.
Yeah, I actually had a negative reaction to the mayor's statements today. I think it's wrong, frankly, to vilify or attack people of faith. You said thoughts and prayers ring hollow. I think thoughts and prayers are the most solid on days of tragedy for people who live their faith every day. And I think on a day like today, particularly in a church community, there are probably people praying harder for comfort today than they have ever prayed in their life. And so I think, and I've heard others on the left today go down this line of attack against people of faith, sort of denigrating the idea that they might want to pray today. And so I think his statements were misguided. The thing that struck me today, Abby, truthfully, when I was watching this unfold, was that the 2 little ones that died were 8 and 10. I have 7 and 9. Those are my 2 youngest. They turn 8 and 10 in a few days. And we could probably sit here and argue out all the issues of faith and transgenderism and all the other things that have been raised today, but it strikes me that none of us ever want to know the terror and the absolute empty hole that will never be filled that those parents of the 8 and 10-year-old are going to feel. And I just thought maybe tonight the most useful thing any of us could do would take 10 seconds and just sit quietly and be still and be quiet and think about those families, because they are never going to be the same, no matter what we say.
They aren't. And I think that this is, so many.
What? The guy asked her to take 10 seconds to just stop and sit there for the children who died. And the moment he stopped speaking, she's like, gotta run the show, man. We gotta speak something. Start spurting out. What?
Times I've sat in this chair all hours of the day and night, and it doesn't matter what time of day, what day of the week, there's another mass shooting in this country. There are people like Senator Chris Murphy, who represents Connecticut, where Sandy Hook happened. I remember when that happened, and again, many people thought how could we allow this to happen again?
So that was it. All right, man. It's a lot. I don't really have something to say, but well, it's gonna go on. People are gonna forget that this even happened after some time, and Democrats are gonna go back to their talking points, and the Republicans are gonna go back to their talking points. The ones who actually, very few people actually care about the people who have died, their families, and the people who've got injured, their families. I hope, I'll pray for these families, and I hope you guys too. I believe in prayers. I think it means, I think God hears you when you talk to him. So yeah, I hope you got something informative from this video. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, take care everyone, and bye bye.